ideas. And let's disagree respectfully. And we're listening to learn. We're all here to learn, myself included. So yeah, looking forward to sharing with you more about the project. Next slide, please. So starting out with the site history. So for folks who aren't familiar to this site or are new to our community engagement activities, this site was formerly owned by Duquesne Slag Products Company until the 1970s. And so during that time period, Duquesne Slag diverted a byproduct from the steel manufacturing process, which is known as slag, to this site. Because slag is a toxic material, the URA had to enter into a Land Recycling and Environmental Standards Act, as well as a consent order and agreement on the site. And so essentially, the consent order and agreement says that in order to develop the site, the URA needs to remediate the site in order for any future use to occur because of the toxicity of the product, of the slag that was dumped on this site. Also, I'll just note that for folks who are new to kind of this project or our engagement sessions, on the right, you'll see an image of what was formerly planned for the site. So for folks who don't know, the URA was engaged with a developer to do another phase of Somerset, which folks may be familiar with across 9 Mile Run. And these are some pictures of the plan. So the site that many folks refer to as the slags and where our construction activities are occurring to date. This was the plan for the site prior to the URA's kind of change of direction to the project as it exists today, which is a first phase remediation of the site. So a cleanup of the site based on the consent order and agreement here. And then the future phases include a solar development on 15 acres of the site and an extension of Frick Park. So the URA plans to work with the city of Pittsburgh to acquire the site and extend Frick Park an additional approximately 55 acres. Next slide, please. So yeah, I want to talk about the community engagement, especially around this shift. So that's a big change, right? Initially, we were expecting housing. We were expecting a very large infrastructure project related to an access road from commercial directly to the site. And we heard a lot from the community at that time. We heard that, the additional traffic, especially through the neighborhood, was not desired. We heard from folks who were tree advocates that bringing down some of the best tree stands in the area in terms of old growth was undesirable. And so the URA made a shift to this scope, which really cut down on the trees that would need to come down and manage some of those larger economic issues in terms of the financing plan related to the infrastructure to come up with a plan that was here today. We first pitched this plan back in September of 2021. So for folks who have been here along with us all the way, yeah, we've been meeting for over 4 years at this point, a long time we've been together working on this project, considering the development for this site. You'll note some of the other community meetings here. Most recently, we had a pre-construction community meeting in January of 2025. Where we talked about what could be expected during the construction. And I also want to give a shout out to a couple organized feedback sessions that aren't listed here. Prior to the organization of Swisshelm Forward, there was no community group in the area specific to Swisshelm Park. And so we actually created a steering committee related to this project particularly. And so for any folks in the room who were on that steering committee, just want to give you a shout out as you were hugely supportive in the earlier phases of planning and development around this project. And I just want to note that there were, additional feedback sessions besides what you're seeing here. Also, shout out to the community center with such great Halloween decorations for our October 18th meeting in 2023. So a little bit about the project overview. So I described, what could be expected bigger picture around the remediation, then the solar development, and of course the expansion of Frick Park, which I know we're all really excited about. So I want to zoom in now to the project that we're at right now. The first phase, which is the remediation, which just as a reminder, the URA is obligated by the DEP, the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, to remediate the site here. And so we're thrilled that after years, we've been able to fundraise and effectively clean up this site for, a green energy, clean development purpose, as well as an expansion of a public park that we know so many residents know and love. So a little bit about what remediation means to us, particularly in the case of this slag heap on the site. So there's a capping requirement. So what does it mean to cap a site? Essentially, it means that there's a combination of clean soil or clean fill that will be delivered to the site, as well as topsoil. So for folks who don't know what topsoil is, it is a highly nutritious layer of soil. It's nutrient dense so that plants can essentially thrive as they're rooting in that layer of topsoil. And then a vegetative cover. So the goal is to have the layer of the clean fill, then the topsoil to really help the plant matter engage and the roots come down and hold in that cap. So the total volume of soil we're talking about here is approximately 50,000 cubic yards. It's extensive to fill the entirety of the areas within this site. You can see the yellow areas here on the screen to the right. Those are the areas that we are obligated to remediate based on our remedial investigation report or remediation plan. I want everyone to be aware that part of the construction activity includes erosion and sedimentation control measures. So that's prior to the topsoil placement. And this ensures that, we've gotten a significant amount of rainfall this spring and summer. This ensures that we're protecting the soil from staying in place, especially prior to the landscaping layer or vegetative layer really holding in that soil. So this includes silt fencing and sedimentation traps, for example. And just to kind of paint a picture of at the end of this project, what we expect things to look like, you can expect a vegetated meadow and new native forest. So we're going to speak a little bit more to the landscaping plans in later slides, but you can imagine a meadow and new tree cover on site. And with that, Jack, I will pass it to you to share some construction progress updates.
Thanks, Lily. Yeah, and it's a really spectacular overview, and I'm gonna ask you guys to bear with me just a little bit because, I'm really used to staring at, construction drawings and plans and, all types of stuff. And I know that most folks are not. And I know also that sometimes, we're limited in like the documentation that we can disseminate that'll kind of describe how the construction will or has progressed. And I know sometimes when we also, talk about it kind of just one-on-one or in a situation like this, it's maybe not as clear precisely like what tasks are happening because I'm talking about phases and numbers and quantities, and it's sometimes not, it's just not as verbose as I would like it to be. So I'm gonna ask you guys to bear with me for just a second as we look at a construction drawing, and I'm gonna try and eliminate some of this, potential confusion as much as possible before we get into actually talking about, like Christina and Lily have mentioned, where we are and where we're going from here. So briefly, just in reference to the graphic that's on the screen on that left-hand side. So when Lily just got done talking about those yellow areas on that kind of satellite overview, the same thing applies to all these yellow areas you're looking at on this graphic. So all this yellow, that's all labeled phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4 in those blue boxes, those blue call outs. That's where all the new soil is going. So this is where we've done all of the clearing of the shrub and some trees, right? This is where we're putting the combination cap. We're doing that fill and that topsoil cap. And then it's also where the entirety of these yellow areas is going to be seeded at the very least with a meadow mix. And then a lot of it, as we'll see a little bit later, is also going to have new tree cover on it. But we can talk about that more specifically. So as I continue to talk about these things, I'm going to make reference to, and I'll continue to clarify it, but I'm going to make reference to these different phases. And what I'm talking about is just these different sections of area that are flatter, that are getting these soil caps throughout the extent of the project. So this is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about which phase we're in or what phases can be completed and stuff like that. To get a little bit just oriented, I have two little purple boxes here on the right-hand side. Those two little purple boxes are at the ends of Love Street and Goodman Street, respectively. So that's where we've been accessing the site from Swisshelm Park up to this point. So that kind of puts it in perspective a little bit, right? There's one big flat area we're calling phase 2. That's the one directly off of Love Street, right? And then there's a flatter area right off of Goodman, right? So at the end of that little transmission line right-of-way area, there's a big chunk of it called phase 3. And then we also access phase 1 off of Goodman Street as well. So that's how we're getting to where we're going. And that's just to give us a little bit of context about what parts I'm going to be talking about. We're at about 70% total completion right now. So about 70% of our work on site is complete, meaning that we have completed the cap and we've seeded and mulched a great deal of the area. I'll have some more specific pictures, so we'll see that a little bit more clearly. But we're completely done with 1 and 3. So those two blue boxes on the second half of the graphic there, 1 and 3, those are finished. All the soil's down. It's been seeded. It's good to go. We're just waiting on establishment right now for the vegetation. Phase 4, which is on the left-hand side of your picture, is the one kind of right adjacent to 9 Mile Run. That one we're wrapping up presently and be done the end of this week. Well, it's the end of this week now, so it's done. And then the remainder of our work is all going to be in this big flat area off of Love Street. It's going to be in phase 2, what I'm calling phase 2. That's what we're working on right now, and we're getting there. Jumping back to phase 4, just very briefly, we're not using 9 Mile Run at all anymore. We haven't used it up until now. We have a little bit of fencing kind of around just the flat portion right next to 9 Mile Run that we're putting soil down. But now we're just going to leave that be, let the vegetation establish. We'll leave the fence up there just so people don't go, tromping on it or whatever. But we're not obstructing 9 Mile Run at all after today and tomorrow. We're done. We're done. So that's all tied up, or I'm sorry, complete. Tied up makes it sound weird. Okay, so now, and I apologize again because I'm making references to a lot of stuff. I'm just going to show a couple of pictures to give like some real life, genuine meat to the kind of the phasing and the pointing and the plans. So this is just a map. This is actually a piece of imagery that was created from a series of drone photographs. This is as recent as last night. So this is what the site aerially looks like as of yesterday. And it's kind of a little bit easier to see, I think, and give context here that this kind of bottom portion here, if you remember, is calling phase 3. It looks a little bit lighter and it looks a little bit torn up and stuff. All this has been capped and seeded. So we're waiting on establishment there. It's not been very long since we've done it, so there's not a whole lot of grass yet. And also, to Lily's point, it's been really rainy, but it's working on it. So that part is all done. That part off of Goodman Street, complete. Just waiting on vegetation to establish. This center section here, which is what we're pointing at and calling phase one earlier. This was the first thing that we finished, actually, just because it worked out best that way. And you can kind of see on this left-hand side, this is the chunk that we finished first. So it's getting mossy, or not mossy, it's getting cover already. And then these two later chunks in the center there, we're working on it. There's seed down, it's getting there. And kind of at the top of the picture here, you can see we've got equipment there. We've got our Love Street entrance, is that kind of gray wraparound where the trucks run through it and knock them off their tires and stuff. This is phase two, this big chunk here at the top of your screen. Working on that right now. We're not done grading that yet. We're still importing soil for that and stuff. And then this portion of this little switchback here that goes down to 9 Mile, that's what we were calling phase four. That's the one that we wrapped up this week. So that one is also done. It's waiting on established vegetation, but it's getting there. And then this is just kind of a different angle. Again, it's just for context, makes it I think, a little bit easier to understand. On the left-hand side, we get a good view of phases 1 and 2, which are like the two big flat pieces, right? And then there's that kind of phase 4 switchback kind of at the bottom of that photograph. That's done with the capping and stuff now. That's wrapped up this week. The photograph on the right-hand side is much the same thing, right? Just a little bit of a different angle there. And then this is just pointing the other direction, just another angle on kind of the same portions. But on the left-hand side, those are the two flats. Again, we're done on that upper one. You can see there's rainwater everywhere because it dumped yesterday, but vegetation is growing. That's great. It's getting there. And on the right-hand side, this is kind of just looking the other direction. The top flat, it's getting vegetated. It's getting there. Bottom flat, we're still working on it. That kind of switchback over there, our phase 4 switchback done, just waiting to get vegetated. So that's just a little bit of, real life context. And I know that we don't often in person see it from this height, but I think it gives, a little bit of a clearer picture than just a drawing. Okay, so we talked very briefly earlier about a scope change in, as it directly relates to our landscape plan. So the landscape plan we're talking about for this project is not really that involved, but it's two big things. It's where does the meadow go and where do the trees go, right? So the only significant kind of modification that we've made, or not modification, it's a bad way to describe it, but the only thing that has been unaccounted for in our initial set of construction drawings is we had to remove more tree cover than we initially accounted for. So what I'm talking about, and what I'm sure most people know about already, is in the southernmost portion of the site. I'm actually going to flip back to the picture just so that we're all on the same page. Okay, so on this southernmost portion of the site, this is the entrance off of Goodman Street, right? There is a bunch of tree cover in here that was just, there's no way to get around taking it out. It should have been included in the initial set of construction drawings. It just wasn't. We have to get machinery in there to move soil and to cap that portion of the site. Again, part of, just like Lily keeps talking about, it's part of our consent agreement with DEP to remediate that area. Oops, so sorry. Part of our consent agreement to remediate that area, we have to do it. The trees should have been cataloged for removal before we started. They weren't. But to account for that, I'm sorry to flip between all these photos again. But to account for that, we went back to the design consultant and were like, hey, this is very obviously missed. We need to account for this. We need to ensure that, we're being responsible with our landscape plan and how we plan to replace the tree cover. So what you're looking at right now on the screen on the right-hand side, and this is up on the website, this is our original landscape plan. So I have two big green boxes here on the right-hand side, all those little weird little bubbles with the little dots in the center of them. Those were the trees we had initially planned to plant as part of this project. That's not changing. We're still going to do all of these trees, but because of the additional tree cover removed, or that wasn't accounted for in the original construction drawings, we're doing a calculation on the size of all those trees. And then we go to city forestry and we say, hey, this is what had to come out in addition. They give us a formula based on the size of the tree, excuse me, that gives us a number of new plantings. And basically the way that it works is you measure the tree, you get a diameter, you get a size, and then whatever the size diameter is of the tree, you replace that inch for inch. So this is an important distinction that it's not, okay, you remove one tree, you place one tree. It's you remove a number of inches of tree, you replace the same number of inches. So what that would look like is like, say, you remove a 12-inch tree, you're obligated to replace 12 inches of new tree, which could look like 6 new trees if all of the trees were only 2 inches in diameter. So it's not a tree for tree replacement, it's an inch for inch replacement. So that's how we calculate the new number of trees to add on to our landscape plan in order to account for those that were removed, not on the original construction drawing. I know that's a lot, I'm sorry, but I've had this conversation a lot in the past couple months, and I understand it really well. If for whatever reason it's unclear to you, let me know, and we can talk about it. Not a big deal. So this is our original plan. This is what's getting modified right now. This is what we're looking for as far as an update from the design consultant. So these areas in green here that I have real bolded and then have that big arrow pointing towards, these are the areas we're going to allocate for additional plantings, right? So that inch for inch replacement that I was talking about earlier, these are the areas we're going to use or investigate on how to use best for more plantings. So important to note, all the trees that were originally planned, staying there. Nothing changing about that. We're just adding more. And it's going to be in those areas that are dark green, kind of on this graphic on your screen. We're working through that actively. My most recent meeting with them was earlier this week. Walked the site, got some ideas. I owe them some additional drone photos just to add a little bit of context, but we're hoping to get a revision of that by the end of this month. It's pretty realistic. It's not super complicated. We just got to make sure that we're being responsible with our spacing and with the species placement and that good stuff. So big takeaways. It's not tree for tree. It's inch for inch replacement. We're leaving all the trees we originally planned to plant, and we're adding more. So that's the big changes in the published construction drawings. That's what you'll see in an update when we get that revised plan, is you'll get to see what it looks like with more tree cover included in the construction drawings. Okay. This is kind of just another little piece of context, right? As we move into or move out of talking about landscape plan, and I'm just going to talk about schedule and where we're going and what that means for Swisshelm Park for the next little bit of future. So I talked very briefly before about the access points into the site. Everybody knows we've been using Goodman for a while. Everybody knows we've been using Love for a while. And a lot of people know we had planned to use 9 Mile Run and make a little switchback road up there to kind of get to some of the more tighter spaces. The good news is, like I was kind of talking about earlier, we're not using 9 Mile Run anymore for soil import. We're not taking any trucks up 9 Mile Run. We're not going to close it off. We're not going to widen it. We're not going to do anything to it. It's staying just the way it is. We're not touching it. We had some equipment that was available, was a little smaller. We worked with the whole team worked together to find a little switchback and cut back so we could move material down from phase 2 on to 4 without closing the trail. So 9 Mile Run is out of scope now. We're not using it at all. Goodman was the main use or I'm sorry, it was the access point that we used most heavily in the previous phases, phase 1 and 3. We're not taking any triaxial soil deliveries through Goodman anymore. So we're done with that. All the soil import, we're taking down to Love Street now. We will have a little bit of traffic down Goodman, but it's not going to be like the triaxial volume you've seen up till now. It's really only going to be like if we need to move pieces of equipment from access point to access point, or when we take delivery of our trees, or something like that. But it's not going to be directly triaxial traffic for soil import. So there will be a little bit of use of Goodman throughout the remainder of the project, not nearly as much as there has been. And to that end, this is another, kind of just point of clarification. Again, I'm used to staring at maps and stuff. Not everybody does it because not everybody is as dorky as me. I get it. But this is, a graphic that a lot of you have seen up until now. This was heavy emphasis on that. This was our truck route, entry and exit route for soil triaxial deliveries through the Goodman Street access point. So this is what we were using when we were taking soil into the Goodman Street access for phases 1 and 3. This is not the triaxial route we're using right now because we're done with soil import on that side of the site. So this was relevant when we were using Goodman. We're not using this route anymore because we're not taking soil through Goodman anymore. And then this one you've probably also seen, but probably a little bit more recently. And I think that the potential confusion there is like, well, you had a route and you changed it, what's going on? Super easy to get confused. Even the colors are the same, right? But the key difference here is that this is a completely separate route for a completely separate point of access. So now, since we're taking all of our soil deliveries through Love Street for the remainder of the project, all those triaxials are coming through Love Street. This is the triaxial routing that we're using for the remainder of the project. So all the rest of the soil that's coming onto this site is going to be coming through this access route. I, again, really appreciate that it's super easy to get those two things conflated. Just one was the one we were using while we were using Goodman. This is the one we're using now while we're using, while we're using Love Street. So those are the kind of two big, I think, points of clarification. I know that the tree plan was one and the truck traffic was another one. And yeah, I hope this clears it up. And the only other thing that I'll say is I know we also, a couple of weeks ago, especially, we're having a little bit, or we were getting a little bit of feedback from the community to, directly to us, to Lily, through Swisshelm Forward, or directly to Brex, that we were getting some triaxial traffic deviation. And we've been, really intentful in approaching Brex and their subs about that. And from the feedback that we've gotten since then, it's been almost completely removed as an issue. There's been a lot less happening. If for whatever reason, you see a truck off route, or you think it might be off route, or you're not sure if it's ours, or you just, you're concerned about something, or maybe you're concerned about, a pothole or going the wrong way on a one-way street or whatever, please feel free, take a picture of the truck. That'd be great. Send it to me, send it to Lily, just so we can get ahead of it and communicate it. Because that's been, really the general solution for all this stuff is just as soon as we get it, we communicate that to our GC or whomever, and we can get it addressed. So I really appreciate Swisshelm Forward also for helping facilitate that. But yeah, let your concerns be known for sure. And I think that's probably where I'm going to wrap up. I'm going to pass it to Lily before I pontificate some more. But thank you, everybody, for coming, and I appreciate the time.
Thanks so much, Jack. So a little bit of just repetition of what we've learned so far. So the remediation here includes placing a cover of imported soil and vegetation over the contaminated landscape. This is known as capping. I want to talk a little bit about timeline here. So we're expecting really the heavy duty truck traffic to be wrapping up about the end of August. And you'll note here that our project in full is expected to last through the end of September. I do want to give a caveat here that obviously part of this work is tree planting, and so that will be weather dependent now. There are, depending on how warm it will be in September, October, we could even have to wait until November for some of our tree species to be planted in a way that will effectively establish. So we're putting September here. I want folks to understand we may need a little bit of flexibility, especially around the tree planting. However, the bulk of the soil delivery, which is, the reason for the heavy truck traffic, is expected to end at the end of the summer here and really in August. So yeah, I want folks to really understand the public health dynamics at play here. So this site cleanup keeps the contaminants in place in a way that prevents exposure to people, pets, wildlife, and it really ensures a healthier environment. And so this is in preparation for the next phase of the project, the solar development, but also in preparation to prepare, a wonderful asset for the city of Pittsburgh in terms of land that to this point has been off limits, owned by the URA, and will become a public asset for folks to enjoy into the future. So yeah, that's just a little bit about timeline for the remediation. Next slide, please, Jack. And we'll, finish up here with the formal kind of presentation by just sharing a tentative project timeline for the solar development. So as I mentioned, we're expecting to wrap up this project in September, definitely by the end of the year, at which point we'll be moving kind of full steam ahead into the solar development phase. This is a tentative request for proposal timeline that is pretty standard for us with other development projects. This is at this point just what the initial expectation should be, but please note that it is tentative at this time and is likely subject to change. A little bit about the solar. We are expecting, as I noted before, about 15 acres to be dedicated to the solar development. This is about 3 megawatts of solar energy. We are working through with a solar consultant, Pennsylvania Solar Center, who is helping us navigate both the political environment we're in today in terms of policy changes, as well as the potentiality for the site in terms of off-taker approaches for the energy itself, as well as power purchase agreements down the line. So yeah, a lot is still in kind of the research and development phase here, but we are actively in conversation with folks and are excited to share more as our remediation phase wraps up and we move full steam ahead into the solar development phase of the project. Next slide, please. All right, so at this point, we are going to move over to our Q&A portion of the agenda here. I've listed my contact info here. So I'm Lily. I'm Senior Manager of Development Projects at the URA. You can note my email address there. So please feel free to reach out to me anytime. If you would like to connect directly, I can connect you with Jack and other folks on our project team here. Should you have any issues or questions that aren't addressed on this meeting today, I don't want folks to feel like this is the only opportunity to get in touch. We are always available for community engagement outside of these public meetings, so please don't hesitate to reach out. I will also note that we have a community listserv. So if you would like to hear more updates about the project, if you'd like to be informed about upcoming meetings, that is the place that I will refer to when sharing all of those things, project updates, new meetings, etc. So if you're not on our listserv, please reach out to me with your contact info, and I'm happy to get you on there so that you can be a part of this project and really continue on with us as we navigate closing it out. So I'm going to go ahead and open up our first question here. The question is from a member of the community that lives at the end of Love Street. And their concern is how much of a buffer will there be between their house and the first solar panel. They've listed their preference would be to have two staggered 12 by 48 feet knolls, creating a serpentine drive into the site. They don't want to see anything but park is essentially their comment here. And so, yeah, in terms of the buffer, because we haven't engaged with the solar development team, and we're still, not quite on that phase yet. We're still focusing on the remediation. We don't have any designs for the solar yet. So we won't be able to answer that question today, but I'm hopeful we'll have more information about that, likely at the beginning of 2026. So please feel free to reach back out then. And yeah, note my contact info here. Okay, next question. Please summarize the URA and BREC's engagement with residents affected by water truck excess and tree damages, particularly as they relate to how the project wants to receive and respond to neighborhood issues moving forward. So I've got my contact info here. Please feel free to reach out to me directly. I want folks to feel free to connect directly with the URA. We can get you in touch with who you need to get in touch with. The URA requires that our contractors are appropriately insured in the event these types of damages happen. So it's built into our contract with our general contract that that the contractor is prepared to manage these issues. So it will be likely working in larger cases with your insurance company and our contractor. But for smaller issues, we're happy to kind of connect and just kind of work together to come to a solution. So yeah, I would say in terms of the, how folks should respond, please feel free to just direct any questions or concerns to me with my information here, and I'll be sure to connect you with the right folks to manage the issue. Okay. Moving on, do recent federal cuts affect the future of the project, including frick dedication and solar farm construction? So from my seat today, I don't have any reason to believe that the recent federal cuts will have any effect on the frick dedication to the city of Pittsburgh. There are some funding sources related to the solar development that we will no longer be able to access in the future of kind of fundraising the solar development. However, we are, excited about the opportunity to be creative in financing here. And so we are still, ready for the challenge of fundraising, even in this particular political environment. Next question is there any doubt that the solar farm will be built? If there is, what is the backup plan? So in this point, we are not doubting that the solar farm will be built. And so we haven't explored the backup plans. But as soon as we have a backup plan and we need to go down that road, if that is the case in the future, we'll be sure to connect early and often with the community as we did regarding this scope change. As I discussed at the beginning of the meeting, from housing now to solar and a Frick Park expansion, we connected with the community very, very early on when we made that shift in scope and development scope. And should there be any change to the solar farm development, we would plan to have the exact same community engagement strategy early and often. The next question is along those same lines. So is the dedication of 55 acres of Frick Park a certainty? I've been working in government almost a decade at this point, and I can't say that anything is a certainty in any absolute terms. But as far as my seat is here today with the information I have, I believe that the 55 approximately acres will very likely be dedicated to Frick Park. Next question is that so up to Graff Street was not mentioned when speaking about truck access to the site, as there have been many trucks per day with heavy loads going down that street. Invisible damage has occurred. What is the plan to fix the damage? Are the streets going to be repaved and the sewer system assessed for integrity after all those heavy loads have been delivered? So as Jack mentioned, anything folks can do to send us photos of the damage directly is extraordinarily helpful. We did a pre-site inspection. We will do a post-site inspection that includes some of these access roads. And the URA has set aside and done contingency planning around ensuring that we have fundraised to fix the damage to the streets. So we want to be sure that, the streets of Swisshelm Park are left ideally better shape than how we found it, but at least, how they were when we found them. And so that is the plan to fix those damages related to the any issues on the streets. But again, we would encourage folks to send us any photos of potholes. We'll do our best to assess the damage as soon as possible and as soon as we can manage it. We do have funds set aside for the street damages. The next question is, would the URA be interested in hosting or sponsoring a community tree planting event as construction wraps up to complement the landscaping plan? I love this question. I would be thrilled to be engaged in that. I definitely will take this back to kind of our community events planning team and see whether this could be possible, as well as, in terms of navigating the dynamics around kind of the city's requirements with the tree planting. But I think it's a fantastic idea. Thank you for mentioning it, and I'll definitely take this back. And should it be a go, I would say folks would be able to get more information about it by reaching out to me directly at the email that is on the screen here and asking to have their email added to the community listserv. So if we're able to move forward with that after I take it back to my team internally, that's where you would find out more information about it. So I would say, shoot me a message, I'll get you on the list, and then keep your eye out for that down the line if it's a possibility. The next project is, can the project establish something like on-site office hours when a project representative would be available to residents on a walk-up basis? This is definitely something that I could consider. Yeah, I think that, whoever kind of is interested in this, why don't you reach out to me directly and we can kind of consider what makes sense here. I would encourage, I'm available for any conversation to be had. So if you're interested in connecting with me on a walk-up basis, or like for an in-person meeting, I would say please just connect with me directly. And I'm happy to accommodate that. So yeah, we can definitely look into an office hours time slot. Is there any follow-up plans in the landscape plan to ensure trees get established and survive or are replaced in a year? So there definitely is follow-up related to our partners at the DEP. Jack, I'll defer to you if you know any specific time frame in which that will occur.
Yeah, I think that it's a good question. I think that it probably has less to do specifically with DEP and probably more to do specifically with landscaping warranties. So I think that I think the short answer is yes. The long answer is we'll come back, a season after all the trees are in and do a walkthrough with either, a landscape architect or an inspector or special inspection, something like that, to ensure that everything that's warranted is establishing, healthy, and doing what it's supposed to do. So short answer, yes. Long answer, definitely.
Thanks, Jack. Next question. Why did they decide to use Love Street for access when their original meetings they indicated it was too small and Goodman would be used? So the reason that Love Street ended up being able to be used was because after actually driving to the site, it turned out that Love Street was large enough in terms of the turning radius to be effectively used. So initially, before we had hired a contractor and before we had, driven the site in these larger vehicles, we weren't sure whether it would be able to be used or not, but we were worried that it wouldn't be able to be used because of the size of it. And so when it turned out that we actually could use it, it was it was at that point that we decided that it would become a regular access point. Okay, the next question. If Pennsylvania were to pass a law enabling community solar, would the URA consider utilizing the site for a community solar project? We would definitely consider that. I think it is really unfortunate that we don't have that optionality at this time. And I would encourage folks to, reach out to your legislators, depending on how you feel with your own political views around this issue. But it is something that, we would definitely consider should it pass. And for folks who are interested in following this particular bill, I can provide just a quick update that it has passed through the House, but not the Senate, and it's Bill 1842. So for folks who are interested in following and care about that particular issue, I will note that for your consideration. The next question, will the haul routes be repaved, Goodman and Love? Again, we will be repairing any issues to the site and the routes to the site in terms of the roadways. Will the land still be donated to Frick Park regardless of the solar development? So only the land that will not be used for the solar development will be donated to Frick Park. So the solar development will occur separately from the land that will be dedicated to Frick Park and will be transferred to the city of Pittsburgh in terms of ownership. Okay. The next question is, do you have any thoughts on the study that came out recently from Virginia Tech where it was found on average residential homes within 3 miles of a solar farm lost about 4.8% of their property value? I think that, it's our understanding that actually, based on the remediation of the site, which increases property home values, and the access to the additional 55 acres of Frick Park, I don't think that just the solar panels can be taken in a vacuum. I haven't read this particular study, so I can't speak to it directly. But in coordination with the other dynamics of this particular project in which we are remediating a site, in which we are expanding the park space directly accessible to these homes, I really think this is going to be a net value gain for property owners in the area. Okay. Do the areas of the slag that were not shown in phases 1 through 4 have any capping, i.e. the wetlands and the homemade BMX bike track along this steep homemade BMX bike track along the steep hillsides between each of the phases? So no, they will not. Anything that wasn't shown in the phases will not have cappings, especially the wetlands. We updated our kind of wetland mapping ahead of this project to ensure that that would not be, disturbed within the scope of our project. Jack, do you want to add anything there?
Accurate, Billy.
Okay, great. Will the URA maintain control over the area of the panels? If not, will the utility company? When will park portions be turned over to the city and or Parks Conservancy? So the URA plans to continue to own the area of the panels and lease out the land to the solar development team. So in that way, we will maintain long-term ownership. And again, that is the plan to date. Like I mentioned, we are still navigating some significant kind of research and development and understanding our options around the future development and ownership possibilities, especially as it relates to the power purchase agreement, and some of the larger particularities around the solar development. But our plan at this time, based on what we know today, is that we will maintain long-term ownership of the land beneath the panels. And the owner operator of the panels, they will own the panels above the ground, but not the land itself. In terms of timing for when the URA plans to kind of make the change of ownership to the city of Pittsburgh, we are expecting that to occur sooner rather than later, possibly by the end of the year, but we don't have an exact date at this time. And then the next question is, who decides on which trees are planted? It seems to be an odd mix that doesn't include any oaks, maples, or other keystone species, etc. Will there be native plant meadows on the non-forested areas? The plant meadow is the meadow mix is native seeding. So yes to that part. In terms of who decides on the trees, we work on that in coordination with the city, who helps us understand what trees make the most sense for the area. So it's typically decided by them which trees are eligible. And then Jack, if you want to add anything to that, please feel free to chime in.
Yeah, no, that's accurate. I mean, and the only additional thing I'll say is I agree with Ed. I was kind of surprised also, and I asked after this a little bit. It is a team effort between the design consultants, landscape architect, and city forestry. I mean, city forestry is specifically the folks that give it a final stamp of approval, but I think specifically what motivated that species selection in particular was that it was kind of the collection of species that were most like what the rest of the surrounding cover was, while still being, non-invasive and it's the healthiest version of what's already there in forestry's eyes. So that was kind of the motivation there.
Okay, great. And that is the extent of our Q&A here. So like I said, we have an open door policy around reaching out after the projects. I'm sorry, after the presentation here on the project today. So please note my contact information in the chat. I'm happy to answer any additional questions you may have. And yeah, if you're interested in like an on-site kind of neighborhood office hours visit with me, please feel free to reach out to me directly. I'm definitely open to that. And I'll just do one last pitch here. To join our kind of listserv around this project, please feel free to reach out to get on the listservs, to hear project updates, to hear more about what's coming for the project, any community input sessions that may be upcoming. And I will just leave it there. I see Christina has her hand up. Christina, please feel free to jump in if you would like to add anything.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that Swisshelm Forward will follow up about the tree planting, sponsoring a community tree planting, because we have a new garden club that is bubbling up and they would love to help you. So I'll help you get connected. And then I'll also follow up with you on the the office hours of sorts, kind of in the area where people could just come to walk up. There was a couple of things that I feel didn't get answered. Is the URA going to do any assessment of the water and sewer lines on the truck routes?
No, we are not planning to do an assessment of the water and sewer lines.
Okay, so only visible damage would be repaired.
Yeah, I mean, if there's any other damage that comes to attention, you know, we're willing to address that, but yeah, we can't address anything that that hasn't come to our attention.
Okay. And so the last truck route that you showed was a little different than one of the previous ones. Are trucks coming up Commercial Street, that one, up Commercial Street from Squirrel Hill, basically outbound?
No, I don't think so. So the only, I think,
Okay, that's
to your
interesting
point,
because
Christina,
there were multiple ones today that I can see from my home office.
yeah, so that's great context. So the only thing, I know we've been having trouble with specifically that recently, and I'm wondering if it's because of the commercial street lane closure. And I don't know for sure if that's the case. But if they're coming up forward, are they coming up forward to commercial? Is that what you
Yeah,
see?
so they're taking forward to Commercial and then turning right on Whipple,
Okay. Okay. Then I
which
then
is
I think
not
the
on this
answer
map.
is yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Christina, if you could take any photos of any of the trucks that you
Okay.
see, I would just reiterate, you know, I think Jack and the team, like we're doing some of the things that we're doing to manage these issues are voicing concerns that we hear to our contractor, at which point they are delivering messages to all the drivers. It is a much more helpful strategy if we can get directly to the source of the specific driver, specific truck that is the issue. So I just reiterate, if there's anything folks can do to take photos, that really helps us to be able to get to the source of the issue.
And then I've got one last question. Obviously people are very interested in this. Will the recording of this meeting or the transcript be posted on the project page? How about previous meetings?
I can talk to our comms team about that. We haven't posted all of the recordings on the project page, but if anyone is interested in any recording, please reach out to me directly. Any other questions on your end, Christina?
I'm not seeing anything on any of my channels that I have open here.
Okay, great. Well, in that case, any closing remarks on your end, Jack?
Oh, not in particular, but thanks for having us and, making the time this evening. I know it's exactly what everybody wants to be doing right now. So thank you.
Great. I also just want to reiterate Jack's thanks to the Swisshelm Park community and folks who have been affected, especially by the truck traffic here. You know, we are enormously grateful for your patience around this. We totally understand the inconvenience that, you know, is occurring for you daily here. We're really doing our best to get this project over with in terms of especially the high truck traffic um, into the site so that, you know, all of our lives can kind of get back to normal around the expectation of traffic in your communities. And so I just want to say thank you again for all of your support and patience through this. We are really excited to get this project to the finish line and be able to deliver 70 acres of remediated, cleaned up site. So yeah, thanks again for joining tonight. Jack, if you could just throw my contact info back up on the screen, please feel free to reach out to us at any time. We can answer any questions that weren't covered today, and definitely address any concerns or any requests for meeting in the neighborhood in an office hours capacity. So please feel free to reach out to me. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great rest of your night.
And I just want to add really quickly, you can also reach out to Swisshelm Forward at any time. You can find one of us in the neighborhood. You can get us on our socials or via email. we're here and we're really happy to help you connect and make sure that your concerns get addressed. And we're going to ask again, we will follow up about a few things, and that will include trying to get recordings or transcripts of all these meetings posted somewhere.
Great.
Great.
Thank you all. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.